Check it out. Don't nothing happen overnight.
Gangs in high school. I mean, it seemed like it was at the height of the recruiting and they were trying to get everybody they could. How did you not, become a Piru or,
I didn't avoid it.
Okay.
But the misnomer about Piru is this. Piru is a street.
Which is, I could throw a rock from here.
And you can hit it.
And I could hit it, yeah.
And Piru was a street with a lot of young males on it. Mm-hmm. The west sides were the streets that were around Piru.
Okay.
West 131st, West 132nd, 33rd,
right,
34th, Stockwell. Piru, it would be 135th Street. Mm-hmm. But for some strange reason, the people that built that neighborhood named that street Piru. Then you had 136, 137, 138th, all the way to 142nd. Right. And what most people really don't know is that if you didn't live on Piru Street, you couldn't walk down Piru Street.
I definitely didn't know that.
So even if you lived on Stockwell, which is right next door, you couldn't come on Piru Street.
I thought if you lived in the around here, Piru was...
Absolutely not.
Wow.
Piru was an entity to itself. And when the Crips came to Centennial in 1972, and by the way, this is the 50-year anniversary of the Crips coming to Centennial, and it's the 30-year anniversary of the Peace Treaty in 1992, which I was the only politician who was invited to watch the Peace Treaty, see the negotiations, and actually have some input on what Crips and Pirus or Crips and Bloods or whatever you want to call them.
Right.
Because to me, they was just all black men.
Right.
Who kind of got misguided. I was there. So the misnomer about Piru is that it's a gang. It's not a gang.
Yeah, I thought it was, yeah.
Piru is a street. And even the west sides are not gang members. That's a location. Now, the problem with the location is that the Crips came in 1972 from Los Angeles and invaded the west side of Compton. They came to Centennial High School. They were specifically looking for the guys that lived on Piru Street. They were asking for the Piru boys.
Oh, okay.
They didn't even know what the name was.
Pronounce it, yeah.
And they came from Fremont. So the war did not start between Compton Crips and Pirus because there were no Compton Crips when this began.
Oh, yeah?
Now, there were Carver Park Crips.
Okay.
And Carver Park is not in Compton.
Yeah, I would.
But the Carver Parks went to Compton schools.
But they do classify, though, as Compton Crips.
And they were the original people to call themselves Compton Crips. This is before Grandee.
Okay.
This is before anything that you know of today.
Right.
Okay? Santana, none of that. And after the Carver Parks, who had invited the Crips from L.A. to Centennial, where the Crips jumped on the Pirus. The Pirus came back to Centennial. There were no L.A. Crips there. So the only people that they could retaliate against was the people that invited the Crips. And that was Carver Park. Now, after the fight, after the retaliation fight, Piru was not satisfied. So they told Carver Park, tell the Crips to come to Centennial that Saturday, and they would fight them one-on-one.
Yeah.
That literally took place. I literally watched it happen.
Right.
And the reason why I know that it happened was because my brother and I were on the roof of my mother's parents' house with an M1 carbine. And we were placed there for only one reason. If the Crips start shooting, snipe them.
Man, that's crazy.
And I was maybe 12 years old,
you had to be
13.
Young.
So the notion that Piru is a gang is wrong. Piru is a neighborhood. It's a street in a neighborhood, and that neighborhood happened to have 10 streets that all begin with West West 131st, West 132nd. Now, when the Crips came back, they didn't come back and say, "Are you a Piru?"
Right.
Because in their mind, the entire neighborhood was Piru. The Crips had no idea that the people that lived in the West Side was fighting the Pirus too.
Man, that's crazy.
So the Crips did a whole lot to unify the neighborhood. Because if you went on Piru Street and you lived on 136th Street, which was one street over from Piru, they would make you pay rent just to be on their street.
That's crazy.
Okay?
And that's how the history started. See, hey, look, guys my age, you know, generations down the line, you know, we had the notion that, you know, it started on Piru Street and it just spread it like wildfire. You know
Well,
what I mean?
it did to a certain extent. Here's what you can say about the original Pirus, who I knew personally. Puddin', Tam, Lowe, Little Vince, Sockeye, Daryl Johnson, Nardy Washington, Crazy James, and if I leave any of you guys out, Jerome Edwards,
Right.
the original Suge. The original Suge lived on the west side of Piru, and he was the leader of Piru Street.
Oh, is that right?
Played football just like Suge.
Yeah.
And if you go into the archives, he literally took somebody's uniform on the Redskins, took it from them, got into the game in the middle of a Monday Night Football, ran a 75-yard touchdown, and threw up a Piru sign once he scored, which put Piru on the national map because nobody knew what this meant.
Right.
And it touched off a documentary where Channel 2 literally came to Piru Street and did a 2-hour-long documentary on the Pirus.
Right.
So this
Man,
is
I'm gonna have to
those
go
were
back
the
and look
original
this up.
guys. And even when we would have neighborhood football games, you couldn't play on Piru's team unless you lived on Piru Street. So it would be
That's
the
crazy.
West Side guys who lived in that neighborhood
Right.
versus Piru. And literally it would break into fist fights
Damn.
because Piru was a different breed of youngsters. They did not like to lose. And what they were was a whole group of athletes. Many of them played pro football, pro baseball. Most of them went to college. They all came from 3- and 4-bedroom homes.
With 2-parent households.
Their street had more money than any street in the hood
Damn.
because they had the newest houses, the best clothes. If you saw the Piru Boys from 1971, you might think you were looking at the Jackson 5. They wore suits,
Yeah.
Stacey Adams, Humbergs. They were always sharp. They had the best slow riders. They had the prettiest girls.
Yeah.
They were not gangbangers.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, let me flip the script for a second. When you was mayor, I know some people was upset when you got rid of the Compton Police Department. Is that something you would have changed or go back on? You know,
Absolutely not.
you wouldn't. Being that the top number 2, 1 and 2 guys, Lee Bach and Paul Tanaka, you know, was involved in a lot of corruptions. I mean, you know, they had gangs over there in the LA Sheriff's Station.
They had gangs in the Compton PD.
Okay, well, you know,
But here's the deal. Under the Compton PD, now I was the mayor for this, so
That's why
I don't
I
have
asked
to
you.
dream
Yeah,
any of this up.
Right.
We were doing 135 murders a year.
Dang.
When the sheriff came, it dropped down to 27 murders a year.
Oh, okay.
It went down to 1 year where there was only 13 murders. Now, I, being a mayor and being somebody who understood the hood, I understood at some point we got to make a decision. And the decision was simply this. Do we want 135 murders a year and keep a black police department?
Yeah.
Or do we want 27 murders a year and have a police department that is not necessarily black? And the reason why the murders, in my opinion, was so rampant under the Compton PD is because they were involved in some of it. The people that they knew,
Yeah, it ain't funny, but damn, yeah.
the people that they knew, were committing the murders.
Committing the murders.
And everybody knows the truth. Everybody knows that the people that were getting their house raided back when the Compton PD was around, half of your dope never made it to court.
Stay tuned for part 3 of the Omar Bradley interview.